And turning to my next guest, it's someone I think who has been calling it out for a long time and picking up from that and really calling for change. It's someone who's greatly inspired me for many years. So I'm really happy to have Ravinder Kaur Nijjar join us. She is the chair of Religions for Peace UK Women of Faith Network, is well-respected interfaith consultant worldwide, educationalist and advocate for women's rights. There are a few questions, Ravinder, I'd love to ask you, but there are things that have just sunk into my head from what Farah has been saying, as I'm sure have sunk into your head as well. And one of the first things is actually just picking up on that thing about calling it out. There are still barriers remaining for equality for women in today's society. So how do we call it out? What are the barriers? Well, first of all, what are the barriers still towards women's equality, would you say? And picking up from what Farah is saying, how do we call it out?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me in. It's an honor and a privilege to be here this afternoon. Some wonderful insights, and the program is appropriately named. Right, what are the barriers? Well, in a nutshell, Ian, it's men. They are the barriers.
I'm sorry.
For both. But I mean,
sure.
I'm correct, because
yes.
The only reason why women haven't got equality is because men feel threatened that if women obtain equality, then their way of life that they know is going to change, right? No, if we look through the ages, 100 years ago, women had to fight for the right to vote, and it wasn't an easy task. They did unite together, but they had to resort to violence in order to make changes to the system. And we're seeing that all the time. I mean, this year happens to be the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration, where it was said that, you know, men should support the equality of women, that women should be empowered, they should have their own properties, that kind of thing. And also it's the 20th anniversary of the 1325 resolution as well. So, you know, there's, I think, again, women need to have a look at, and men, that these policies and processes are in place, but things aren't moving as fast as they should be. If we have to look at the old Millennium Development Goals, the particular goal that hadn't moved forward hardly at all was the equality of women. So there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, for example, if we take the case just in the UK, if you're looking at barriers, obviously things are highlighted like the gender pay gap, etc. But there are other things that people haven't thought of. Because women take time out from work, their pensionable years when they retire are much less. And a lot of women, they also work part-time. So again, at the end of when they become retirable age, they will have less of a pension from their works. Regarding trying to get a mortgage, if you're a part-timer, you're not going to get a mortgage. So there are lots of ways that women have been oppressed because of the system and because of the fact, and I think that men really don't want them to be equal. Because it has been ingrained in them through history, through the centuries, that they are better just because they are stronger physically than women. And it's that attitude that we need to change. That attitude that needs to start from the point of conception, actually, from the point of birth to 5 years, that's where all the attitudes that young children have that are formed up to adulthood, that is the point that we need to look at. So I'm afraid, Ian, men are the problem. And they are the ones that have to unite with women to make the change as well. Because there are some very, very knowledgeable, very wise men who put themselves forward and take up the banner for women as well. So there's a place for women to unite, but there's a place for men to unite with women as well.
Joe, yes, you can come in there. Then
I just want to challenge one thing Ravinder said. Ravinder, the first female Secretary of State in the United States was Madeleine Albright. And as you probably know, she's famous for her statement that there is a place in hell for women who don't help other women. Are women helping other women more today than they were years ago? And what more can they do to help other women?
That's a good question. Yeah, Ravinder?
I think women are helping more women because, I mean, for example, I chair the UK Women of Faith Network, which brings together women from interfaith-based and faith-based organizations so that the voice of women is heard at that religious leaders level. Women are the ones who actually do all the work at that level, you know, at the place of worship level. They do the coffee mornings, they do the mothers and toddlers groups, they do the cleaning and the looking after all the different places of worship and making the langar, the meal in the gurdwaras that we have. But because they do it out of, to serve humanity, okay? They don't want any recognition from that. But their voices from that level to the religious leaders level is not heard. So if they unite together, then their voices become more, let's say, you get a more of a vibration, more of a unity of those voices. And so they're heard. And women also say, if they're at the congregational level, they don't have the confidence or the self-esteem to voice the problems that they have or the difficulties that they have. So if their voices can be heard through a chair of an organization or a president of an organization who has the same sort of power dynamics, then I think that it's extremely important for women to help other women whose voices aren't heard at that level.
Thank you.
It's very, very interesting. We're talking a little bit about how do we, I mean, we know that men are part of the problem, but I think men are also part of the solution, and you kind of hinted at that as well. So how do we, and again, I'm using that phrase about calling out, but how do we call out the men who aren't standing up? How do we call out these men who will say, I never miss a prayer, I devoutly follow my faith, I believe in all the principles of the faith, and then I think to myself, well, where are your principles of equality? If it's written in the scripture, you know, that, you know, all women, you know, all are equal, for example. So what do we do? I know you've got a wonderful exhibition, for example, that has quotations from the scriptures that really challenges that. But is there anything else that you think we could practically do?
Yes, is to educate the men and also to educate the women. As Farah said, women themselves don't know about what their scriptures say, because if we look at previous centuries, everything that is written in the scriptures was probably written by the men, because women weren't able to read and write. So in a way, history and scriptures are skewed because of the fact that men have written them, okay? We don't know her story, we know his story. So history is about his story. Now, the way to educate the men is for them to look at the scriptures, to say, where are the verses? Where are the particular quotes which say women are equal to men. And as you say, I mean, I have this exhibition and this document called The Dignity of Women, Scripture Reflections, which looks at the 9 different world religions and looks at the scriptures. It's just a very, very simple tool to use with men and young boys, and use them as ambassadors to look at what is it that the scriptures say about women, and how should I treat my wife, my sister, my mother. And if I can just say a few of the quotes, as a Sikh woman, we were given religiously, we were given equality by the founder of our faith, Guru Nanak. I mean, he said 550 years ago, in a woman, man is conceived, from a woman he is born, with a woman he is betrothed and married. With a woman he contracts friendship. If one dies, one is sought for, another one is sought for. Man's destiny is linked to woman. Why call her inferior who gives birth to humankind? And I can quote others. I mean, for example, the Prophet Muhammad said, paradise lies under the feet of your mother. And when asked by a man who was the most worthy of good companionship, the Prophet said, your mother, and said that 3 times when asked again, before saying your father. And in the same way, we've got, I mean, I can give you a quote from the Hindu scriptures. It says, the teacher who teaches knowledge is more important than 10 instructors. The father is more important than 10 such teachers of true knowledge. And the mother is more important than 10 such fathers. There is no greater guru than the mother.
Wow, incredible. Just before...
And I can quote loads and loads more from all the
Absolutely, and I think we all generally believe equality is the centre of our faiths, but we've alluded to earlier that sometimes the culture has got in the way, and perhaps there's a little bit of male privilege, also that we want to hold on to these positions. Now, Farah, I was aware you were wanting to come in there just a second, just a couple of minutes ago. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Ravinder. You're so inspiring to me. I just want to point out very quickly that sometimes as people of faith, we know the letter of the law, but we miss the spirit of the law. And I think as people of faith, if we kind of realize it's good to know the letter of the law, but if the spirit's missing, you've lost something there.
You're right. You're definitely right. I mean, people think that just by praying that they are adhering to their faith. It's not just the prayer, it's the ability to look at the other person, whether they're male and female, and see the divine light within them. If you haven't developed your own spirituality enough so that you are unable to see that divine light, if you see that divine light with them, you would never be able to harm the other person. Never. Because you will be harming God.
Wow.
And if you are harming God, then who are you? Are you this compassionate being who's going through a ritual, saying, I pray 24 hours a day, or I serve 24 hours a day? But the actual thing is about practicing your religion and seeing the divine light in all.
So can I ask again, Ravinder, going back to that, so inspiring, what is it that you would suggest we should be doing? Should gurdwaras, masjids, mosques, should they all be teaching, I don't know, courses, or at least part of it on the message of equality to children as they're younger? Should they be having classes somehow where we're saying, how do you into practice? I mean, we've heard earlier I'm going to have things about Ask the Sheikh, and I know Hassan Rabbani in the past has done classes where he has been challenging the men to follow the teachings of equality. Is there more that we individual faith communities could be doing? How do we address it?
I think it's good, very good to have these classes, to have courses, but it's putting these courses into practice.
Right.
I think that's where the family unit comes into being, the parents. So it has to start with the very young. When a child is born, that's where we have to start educating them, the girls and the boys, saying to the girls, yes, you are equal. Yes, you can do educationally, religiously, etc., any other way, socially, culturally, anything that boys can do. So it has to start at that level and then continue through your places of worship, your religious teachings, and then through education. Our educational system also needs to be changed within the state system, because there are inequalities there as well. I mean, if you have a look, for example, I was a primary school teacher, and the very few men go into primary schools, but the number who will be head teachers will be quite disproportionate to the number of women who are teachers within the primary school sector. So there are lots and lots of different areas that we can look at, but looking at the places of worship, the teachings that we have there, looking at the educational systems, how we can change the curriculum regarding that, and then also into higher education. So it's a continuous process.
You're right. It's a lot of things. And similarly, we need other things to measure it as well as the teachings. It's look again at our committees, our governing committees and our places of worship. You've mentioned already how a lot of the work is conducted by women, but how many women are on the Gurdwara committees, are on the mosque committees, are on other places of worship committees? Maybe these are also things that need to be challenged.
They do need to be challenged.
Can I just, sorry.
I'll let Nassim come in now. Sorry, Nassim.
I just wanted to say, the Mother's Lap is the first school. Okay, we all know that, because if you have courses or we're at school, that's going to be 5 years plus. So the Mother's Lap is where the education needs to take place. And so it's the mindset and it's the family unit that needs to have that kind of influence. I mean, when I was growing up, yes, I was of that, you know, the older generation where my brothers were allowed out, they were allowed swimming, but I wasn't. And from that, I thought, okay, I don't like this, something's wrong here. So when I raise my children, I've got 2 sons and a daughter, I raise them completely equally, and my sons do all parts of the housework. And you know, when they'll be married, their wives are going to praise me so much because they'll be able to do everything.
But that's the same with me. With I've got 2 boys and a girl, and I've done exactly the same thing. They know how to cook, clean, and everything. Yeah.
So one of the things, you just I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to just mention one of the projects I'm currently working on. It's called the Vibrant Scottish Mosques. And even in 2020, I mean, the masjid is known as the house of God, yes, but some masjids, and I know this is more so in Glasgow, but not in Edinburgh, alhamdulillah, we're quite lucky in Edinburgh, women are not allowed to enter the masjid. I mean, just look at that. This is 2020, it's the house of God. Why are women not allowed to enter the mosques to pray?
Thank you, Nassim. Farah, just quickly, because I want to just raise another point just before we go on.
Yeah, I was actually asked to be on Glasgow Central Mosque Committee. I actually worked for them as well for a long time. But the mindset behind not being on the committee was that women were veiled as is God, and I chose not to be on it. But I still loved working there. It was the best place I've ever worked in my life. I was so inspired by even the cleaners there had memorized the entire Quran. So I think we're quick to complain of the house of God, but actually many of the success and positive stories that come out of there, you know, I think it's very sensationalized. As an employee of a mosque, I wouldn't believe everything that you hear.
It's good, Teresa. Another question just come in from the audience is, are women in positions of power disproportionately criticised?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Are they more under the microscope? Ravinder?
Yes, I think they are. I think if the same thing happened, nobody would bat an eyelid if it was a man. They are disproportionately criticized. If you're too strong and if you're too aggressive, they say, oh, you're acting like a man. If you're compassionate and you take care of your employees, etc., they think that you're too soft. So there doesn't seem to be a mid-balance that you can have. But you would never do that with a man, because a man, if he's aggressive and things, oh, he's powerful, he's a leader. Yeah, so these kind of attitudes, as Nazim said as well, they all start from the mother, but also from the father. We mustn't forget that the fathers cannot negate their responsibilities, because it is their duty as well to support the mother. It's their duty to make sure that when their wives are pregnant, that they have a stress-free pregnancy, so that the child that is born is peaceful, and child that is born is hopefully spiritual, if we're talking about faith as well. But what I want to end with, Ian, is why would you not, when it comes to your own family, as a man, you would want equality for your wife, for your daughter, for your sister. So in the sort of context of the world, why would you deny that to other women? Why would you deny that to other people's daughters, other people's sisters? So it all has to come down to yourself. I want this for my daughter. I want this for my wife and my sister. But what can I do to help those other daughters and sisters and wives who can't achieve that at the moment?
That's a very powerful way
Great question.
Way to end, and absolutely is planting that seed in other people's minds.